and his son right at the top of the conversation. Here's what Deion had to say.
We're so darn blessed we're not stressed. Do you see how I look right now? Do I look stressed? Let me take these glasses off so you can zoom in. Do I look stressed? No, I look blessed, okay? So, I don't know what they expect from my kids. They daddy's sons, man, please. We're used to adversity. We're used to ignorance and adolescence. We're used to that. So if anybody could handle it, I think they can. And I'm a proud father, not for the stuff that you know about. I'm proud for the stuff that you don't know about that they've gotten through. I am.
I wish you all could have seen the three of these guys enraptured as he was speaking there and laughing, but I think respectful laughter. What are that's your old teammate, Deion
Yeah,
Sanders.
man.
What are you hearing from him right there?
Look, his sons, and Shedeur in particular, because that's who we're talking about most of the time,
clearly.
is uniquely equipped to handle the kind of media firestorm that's going to surround him. And a lot of it is going to be directed at him simply because of what his last name is and how big and larger than life his father is. And a lot of it's just going to trickle down to him. But Deion's telling you, hey, look, you're wasting your time because he is uniquely qualified and he has been schooled to deal with the kind of nonsense that's going to come his way. One of the things that Deion will tell you when you go out there and you talk to him, just from a football standpoint, and ask him to describe the makeup of Shedeur, he will tell you that all his life, this young man has been wise and mature beyond his years, that he's someone who looks after other people, always on the lookout for other people, someone who, quite honestly, is a hell of a leader. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't make mistakes. That doesn't mean that he's not going to continue to grow and become better in terms of lifting other people up. But he will tell you, he can handle any environment that he is going to go into. Because Deion has been in just about every environment imaginable, from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. Everything hasn't always been great for Deion throughout his career, remember now. He has gone through a total transformation from being the guy who basically invented prime time, who kind of like took defensive backs and raised the game to a whole new level, to being at the depths of, his own personal demons that he was dealing with, to now coming back and being larger than life again. He's been through the entire circle, the entire washing machine. There's nothing his kids have not been talked to about. And once they hit the ground running and Shedeur hits the ground running, it's going to be off to the races for this young man.
Look, I mean, having the last name of Sanders, I guess, adds another layer to the conversation. But the reality is when you're a top 2 or 3 pick in the NFL draft, there's an enormous amount of scrutiny in either way. To me, it feels like the questions about him that I don't think there's any question about Shedeur Sanders' mental makeup. I don't think there's any questions about his football IQ.
There are personal biases, though, that people have, that the scouts have, general managers have, coaches have, owners, just against this family overall, because of how larger than life Deion is. Look, there just is. There's some people have an ability to separate the personal feelings from the professional job at hand, which is to evaluate a player and determine whether or not he fits your organization. Some people don't. Some people, the personal kind of creeps into it, because they just maybe don't like his father. They don't like the bravado. They don't like the brashness. They don't like the way he talks, the way he dresses, the way he carries himself. Some people let that affect them to the point where it affects their ability to do the job, which is, can this guy help us win football games? That's what we're talking about with Shedeur Sanders.
That's more fear than anything.
Exactly.
Fear
So
of
look,
not knowing.
so what winds up happening is when you don't like someone personally, you will wind up talking about some of the deficiencies that they may have from a pure quarterbacking standpoint to a degree that really is unwarranted. But there's a lot of criticism about he doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not a great athlete. He took too many sacks. And you're sitting there going, I don't see any issues with Shedeur Sanders' arm. And his athleticism is just fine. He can win from the pocket as well as anybody in the draft. There isn't that big of a gap between him and Cam Ward from an athletic standpoint. There just isn't.
I think with some of this stuff is, you just made the point of when you're looking at the draft at this high up, the scrutiny comes. You can look at over the past few years. Last year, as it came down to it, Caleb Williams, he was too Hollywood. He had the penthouse. It was all these other things. C.J. Stroud was an S2 cognition test leading up to the draft that we were talking about him. So for Shedeur Sanders, you have the fact that you're potentially going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, and you mix that with the fact of who your father is. Look, when we watch Deion Sanders, you said it, we're over there, we're smiling and laughing because he is just entertaining as hell. And you kind of want to be him when you sit there and you listen to him talk. Look at me, and he has, and we all feel that way on the inside, but everyone's not willing to say it. And that has been passed down to his sons. So Shedeur Sanders, all of the inabilities or anything you want to say about him, he's aware of them. He just doesn't care because he believes in himself that much. And if you're drafting a quarterback high up, you want that confidence because it's not all going to be easy. There's going to be adversity.
So think about this when we're talking about Shedeur Sanders. Super confident, very articulate, can play the game at a high level. He has a father that's a black man that's going to stand up for his kids. A lot of people in this country, they fear that.
So, you know, I was just going to say that. Look, for as many people as sit here like us and we're watching Deion talk and we're sitting there and we're kind of like just enamored with the confidence that he exudes. And like, he makes me want to run to him and be around him. And I'm going to be out there. Look, I love being around him because he just makes you feel good and confident about yourself. There's just as many people who are going to look at that clip and go.
It makes them scared, too.
Or just quite honestly, it turns them off. They'll sit there and go, I don't want somebody who's going to like be that bravado and have his glasses on. And look, there was other coaches that challenged him in his career so far at Colorado for the way in which he wants to present himself. You don't think that there are people now who are looking at his son and saying the same thing? Look, this is a business of people. And people have personal biases that sometimes they just can't set aside. And that is what is going to follow Shedeur Sanders.
Well, that would be an enormously bad reason not to draft a player.
You're right, it is.
Especially because confidence is probably the single most important quality someone needs
at the quarterback
position.
Yep.
But some people are just going to look at it differently. They just are. And look, it's unfair and it's unfortunate. And Deion, what he is saying though is, trust me, we ain't letting it affect us and we're not going to change who we are. So better get used to where we're coming from and where we're at because this is who we are. So if you can't deal with it, that's cool. But we're not changing, nor should they. And there's going to be a team that's going to draft him anyway. So it's not going to matter in the end.
That's what I love about the draft because everything we're saying here this morning, there's a team sitting there and they're like, we don't feel any of those things about Shedeur Sanders.
Aaron Rodgers, as possible, or as promised, ESPN has confirmed the Minnesota Vikings are not actively considering Rodgers as a possible addition, leaving J.J. McCarthy atop the quarterback depth chart. There are a lot of different ways to slice up the implications of this story or the ramifications of this story. We know that he has a standing offer from the Steelers. We know that he has a standing offer from the Giants. We assume, and we all know what happens sometimes when you assume, that the reason he has been hesitant to make up his mind on those is that he has been holding out hope that the Vikings would be an option. According to the reporting, the Vikings are not an option. There's a lot of questions that come to my mind. Lewis, the first is this the right decision for Minnesota?
Yeah, I believe it is. Look, I think the quarterback room makeup is critical to J.J. McCarthy's development. You need someone who's not threatening him, especially if, all of this is contingent upon his rehab being on track. Clearly it is. Clearly they feel as though he's going to be ready to go once September rolls around. Now, back to the makeup as far as the quarterback room is concerned. J.J. McCarthy at this point in time needs all the support that he can get. He needs a backup quarterback who's going to be sitting there trying to help him become a pro, not trying to help supplant him and get him out of the starting lineup. I think he doesn't need to feel threatened right now. He needs to feel supported. And that's what Kevin O'Connell obviously understands, having been a quarterback himself. That's what Josh McCown, the quarterback coach, understands, having been a quarterback himself. He needs to feel supported. They obviously have the confidence in him. And he deserves to have that confidence kind of bestowed upon him.
I understand the thinking, and I probably agree with it. Harry, if I was going to play devil's advocate, this is the way I would do it. I think that's a Super Bowl team. And you are now giving the ball to a guy who is essentially a rookie. I understand that he was there. I understand that you probably learned things from being there. So that's probably not the right way of putting it. But he has not yet taken an NFL snap that counted, and you are putting the ball in his hands. If you're a receiver on that team, if you're Justin Jefferson, you feel good about that?
100%. Because we also have to look at the cachet of J.J. McCarthy. 27-1 as a starter. Who was the coach that he played for at the University of Michigan?
Jim Harbaugh?
Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Who took a team last year in his first year to the playoffs and was coach of the year his first year with San Francisco, and he made a Super Bowl before losing to his brother. So he's played for a guy, number one, that was drafted at that position. He was coached up by that same person. They won a national championship together. But supporting cast is everything. And we talked about Kevin O'Connell with Sam Darnold. Why can't we talk about Kevin O'Connell when it comes to J.J. McCarthy? And the supporting cast, that defense that was fantastic last year, and they did a lot of blitzing, well, that's why you go get a Jonathan Allen on that defensive line. That's why you go get a Javon Hargrave, so you can be that much more better, and you might not have to blitz as much as you did in the past. And look at Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hockenson, Aaron Jones. You got more guys on your offensive line.
Yeah.
This
is what I'm saying. That is a Super Bowl team at every position on the field. And now you're giving the ball to a quarterback with no experience.
To your point, Greeny, you can have all the confidence in the world in Kevin O'Connell and Jim Harbaugh, how he's prepared J.J. McCarthy. But there's still a question mark at that quarterback position. Yes, Sam Darnold did get in there and do a good job. But if you are Justin Jefferson, if you are those guys on the defensive side of the ball, you are still having the back of your mind of, I wonder what J.J.'s going to look like when he gets out there and he's a part of this offense. Now, that doesn't mean that Aaron Rodgers was going to be the solution to the problem that they have. But not only is J.J. McCarthy going to be under center for the first time in a regular season game, but he's also coming off of a major surgery that usually takes some time to come back from to gain the confidence. So I do think there are question marks if you're a Vikings player around, hey, what exactly are we getting in this rookie quarterback, essentially in his second year? Because you saw what you liked early on, but now you got to wait and see this year.
Look, I understand in theory exactly what you're saying, but I think, look, there's two things. One, the medical department is one of the most important departments in a football organization. You have to trust that, hey, look, his rehab is going fine. There's not going to be any long-term effects. We are reasonably projecting that this guy is going to be available to us. So let's just kind of like move that out of the way. Remember, when they drafted Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City in 2017, they drafted him 10th overall. Who did they ship out? And they had a strong team at that time. They shipped out Alex Smith, right?
Yeah, after a year,
he played one regular season game, a meaningless regular season game. I think it was a week 17 game. But they knew early on when they got him there, had his first rookie minicamp, this guy is the future.
Yeah.
A lot of the same things are being I'm not equating J.J. McCarthy to Patrick Mahomes, but I'm saying early on, no one believed Patrick would be what he has become either. They have a lot of confidence in this young man. They have talked about the fact that he's done everything right since he's been there. In the brief moment that he did play in the preseason against the Las Vegas Raiders, do you remember how he looked? After he got rid of some of the jitters, he was slinging that thing.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a preseason game and whatever. I think there is another. So look at the words that are on our screen. Not actively considering Aaron Rodgers as quarterback addition. I think there's two pieces to this.
The actively part?
Well, no. I think there's the one of them is the confidence they have in J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
The other is I think there are a lot of teams in the NFL that will have this perspective. I don't want that. Like there's so much that comes with Aaron that has nothing to do with playing football.
That's right.
I don't want that. And that goes back to a conversation we had earlier this morning about his legacy and all the rest of that. Because the great ones tend to go out. They usually don't go out on top. Right. They don't usually get carried off on their shoulders. They get old and they wind up aging out, and you tend to forget about that. The last few years with Rodgers, for better or for worse, and we've been a part of it, I guess, on this show heavily, have been so high profile, so oft discussed, that I think it has become sort of a larger than life off the field situation.
There's the key. For all the wrong reasons, it's become larger than life. And you sit and you wonder, like right now, how is he viewing this? Like if he's thinking about this right now, is he really aware of how people are viewing him? And does he care at this point in time? See, that's the interesting part to me. Does he care that right now, maybe, let's just project that maybe the Vikings are saying we're not actively pursuing you because we don't think you're a good fit for what we're looking for? Like, that's a hell of a thing to tell someone who's a four-time MVP and a first-ballot Hall of Famer. A lot of times, for most people, that would make them kind of like self-assess and go, hey, maybe I have a blind spot about myself, about how I perceive myself relative to how other people are perceiving me. That's why I have said, when you just kind of wrap this whole thing up, he needs Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh needs him. He needs to go somewhere where they just say, hey, look, just play the game. Forget all the other stuff. Just play the damn game at a high level like you're capable of. We'll handle the rest of the stuff.